At 0647 on June 6, 1944, Commander Samuel Day stood inside the cramped conning tower of USS Harder observing three Japanese destroyers moving through the moonlit waters near Toi as they tracked his submarine with precision. He was 37 years old with 5 war patrols and 18 enemy ships destroyed. The Imperial Japanese Navy had sent Minazuki Hyanami and Tanikaze with clear orders to eliminate the American submarine that had disrupted their supply routes for 3 weeks. Until April 1944, American submarines generally avoided Japanese destroyers. A destroyer could reach 35 knots while a submerged submarine could barely make 9. Between December 1941 and March 1944, Japanese destroyers had sunk 14 American submarines while no American submarine had destroyed a Japanese destroyer during an active engagement. Commander Day changed that reality on April 13. When the destroyer Ikazuchi charged toward Harder at full speed, every officer expected him to dive and withdraw. Instead, he ordered full speed directly toward the attacker. At 900 yards, Harder launched 4 torpedoes in a spread. 2 struck the destroyer at midsection, causing a massive explosion and sinking it within 5 minutes. Day's radio message became well known across the Pacific Submarine Force, stating that 4 torpedoes were used to destroy 1 destroyer. Admiral Somu Toyota, Commander-in-Chief of the Japanese Combined Fleet, did not view it lightly. Between January and May 1944, Japan had already lost 23 destroyers. Operation A-Go required precise coordination to counter the American invasion of the Philippines, and losing destroyers to submarines disrupted that plan. By late May, Toyota had gathered the mobile fleet at Toi anchorage, including 4 battleships such as Yamato along with 9 carriers, 15 cruisers and 28 destroyers, forming the largest concentration of Japanese naval strength since the Battle of Midway. American code breakers were aware of this buildup. Admiral Charles Lockwood assigned Harder to patrol the waters around Toi and attack any opportunity. For 9 days Harder remained undetected. Then on June 6 at 0300, a Japanese patrol aircraft detected Harder's periscope wake 15 miles north of Toi and 3 destroyers responded immediately. Commander Day examined the leading destroyer through his periscope. Minazuki displaced 1250 tons and carried 4 5-inch guns. It approached quickly while maneuvering to avoid torpedoes. 2 more destroyers followed in a search pattern, forming a trap. Day turned Harder directly toward Minazuki. The range was 1,100 yards with less than 100 seconds before contact. Everyone understood the risk of a direct approach. Torpedoes would be fired straight ahead, followed by a dive beneath the target. A miss would mean depth charges directly above, and a late dive could result in a collision. At 750 yards he fired 3 torpedoes and ordered a dive to 300 feet. The submarine angled downward sharply. After 40 seconds 2 explosions struck, followed by a third that lifted the stern before it settled again. Returning to periscope depth, Day saw debris and oil where Minazuki had been, indicating the destroyer had broken apart and sunk. The remaining destroyers moved away, dropping depth charges without clear contact. Admiral Toyota received this report at 0900 and ordered 6 additional destroyers to search for the submarine. By noon, patrol aircraft were sweeping the area repeatedly, but Day continued his operations. On June 7 at 0230, Harder surfaced to recharge batteries under dark skies with heavy cloud cover providing concealment. At 0312, radar detected a single ship at 8,000 yards approaching at high speed, which indicated another destroyer. Hyanami, a 1,700-ton destroyer, had been searching since early morning. Its captain, Commander Hideo Kuboki, had been instructed to return to base at 0300 and was fatigued. An American submarine attack on the surface at night was not expected. Day ordered full speed and closed the distance, deliberately aiming to enter detection range before being identified. At 4,000 yards, Hyanami's radar detected a small fast-moving contact assumed to be a friendly vessel. At 3,000 yards, Kuboki realized the situation and attempted to ram, but it was too late. At 2,300 yards, Day launched 4 torpedoes. Two struck near the aft magazine, tearing off the stern. The destroyer rolled sharply with its propellers still turning before sinking stern first. Kuboki and 147 crew members were lost. Harder submerged immediately, knowing patrol aircraft would arrive quickly. Two destroyers had been sunk within 24 hours and the Japanese Navy intensified its response. Admiral Toyota reacted with urgency after losing two destroyers in 2 days to the same submarine. He reassigned 8 destroyers from convoy duty and organized them into hunter-killer groups with a single objective to locate and destroy the submarine operating near Toi Toi. Every captain received direct orders to act with maximum aggression without retreat and ensure the submarine was eliminated. On June 8 they directed Harder south toward Sibuta Passage, which is a narrow strait between Toi Toi and Borneo. Japanese destroyers regularly patrolled this route. Day intended to determine how many he could destroy before his tactics were understood. At 1,400 hours the lookout identified 2 destroyers moving in formation. Tanakes and an unidentified escort were traveling at 25 knots while conducting a standard search pattern. Day observed their movement for 90 minutes. The destroyers followed a consistent zigzag pattern with course changes every 8 minutes. This provided him about 30 seconds to prepare a firing solution after each turn. He positioned Harder along their path and waited for the right moment. At 16:30 Tanakes turned toward Harder's location. The range was 3,000 yards and Day allowed the distance to close further. At 2,500 then 2,000 and then 1,500 yards he held position. At 1,200 yards he launched 4 torpedoes with 17-second spacing. The first missed. The second struck near the bridge. The third hit the forward magazine. The explosion was powerful and the crew heard it clearly even underwater with all hatches secured. Tanakes broke apart at the bow and the section sank within 3 minutes. The escort destroyer reacted immediately and moved toward Harder while deploying depth charges. Day ordered Harder deeper to 400 feet. The explosions shook the submarine but caused no critical damage. After 40 minutes the destroyer stopped the attack and withdrew. 3 destroyers had been sunk in 3 days. Admiral Toyota was preparing to make a decision that would influence the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Day still intended to engage another destroyer and planned to do so in daylight despite multiple enemy ships in the area. On June 9 at 0500 Day brought Harder to periscope depth about 12 miles southwest of Toi Toi. Ahead were 4 Japanese destroyers moving in line abreast formation while actively searching for submarines. Their sonar signals were strong enough to be heard clearly by the sound operator. Day had 8 torpedoes remaining. With 4 destroyers present he expected only limited firing opportunities before being countered. He examined their formation through the periscope. The lead destroyer was maneuvering aggressively while the second maintained a steady course, which made it the primary target. At 0612 the second destroyer turned directly toward Harder's position. The range was 4,000 yards and Day waited as it closed to 3,000 then 2,500 yards. At 1,800 yards he fired 3 torpedoes. All 3 torpedoes struck the destroyer on the port side within 5 seconds. The ship exploded with great force and debris rose nearly 300 feet into the air. It rolled over and sank within 90 seconds. The remaining 3 destroyers moved quickly toward Harder's position. Day ordered a deep dive to 500 feet. Depth charges began detonating above them with 23 explosions recorded in the first 10 minutes. The lights failed and emergency systems activated. Hull plate strained under pressure and a pipe burst in the forward torpedo room, releasing seawater across the deck. The crew continued repairs in silence while explosions persisted around them. After 2 hours the destroyers ended their search and withdrew. Day returned to periscope depth and confirmed the area was clear. 4 enemy warships had been destroyed in 4 days. Day focused on the remaining fuel supply. Harder had already used 60% of its diesel reserves and could remain on patrol for only a few more days before returning to Fremantle. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, who commanded the Japanese mobile fleet at Toi Toi, received reports of the attacks at 1,400 hours on June 9. Four destroyers lost to a single submarine raised serious concerns. Ozawa assessed that if one submarine could breach the defensive screen, then the entire anchorage was exposed. He sent an urgent message to Admiral Toyota stating that the fleet needed to leave Toi Toi immediately. The Americans had clearly identified their position. Toyota agreed with this assessment. Operation Ago required the mobile fleet to intercept the American invasion force near the Marianas, but the plan was scheduled for June 15. Advancing the operation by 6 days meant the carriers would operate without full reconnaissance. Destroyers would remain dispersed across patrol areas and supply lines would not be fully prepared. Despite these risks, remaining at Toi Toi while a submarine continued to destroy escort vessels was not acceptable. On June 10 at 0800 the Japanese mobile fleet departed Toi Toi with 4 battleships, 9 carriers, 15 cruisers and 24 destroyers moving northeast toward the Philippine Sea. American codebreakers intercepted these orders within hours, and Admiral Raymond Spruance, commander of the 5th Fleet, adjusted his plans in response. The early departure provided American carriers with additional time to position themselves for what later became the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Day was not aware of this development. On June 10 at 16:30 he identified 2 more destroyers patrolling north of Cebutu Passage. Both were moving quickly and conducting an active search pattern. Day had 5 torpedoes remaining, which allowed only one more engagement. At 17:15 he launched 3 torpedoes at the lead destroyer. One struck near the bow, which reduced its speed but did not sink it. The second destroyer reacted immediately and moved toward Harder's position. Day then fired his final 2 torpedoes, but both failed to hit the target. He now had no torpedoes left and no means to counter the approaching destroyer, which was closing at 32 knots. Day ordered an emergency dive. Harder descended rapidly as the diving planes forced the submarine downward at a steep angle. It passed 300 feet, then 400 and then 500 feet. The destroyer moved directly above and its propellers created loud noise that the crew could clearly hear through the hull. After a brief pause the sound returned as the destroyer circled back. Day understood the pattern. The destroyer would continue repeated passes while releasing depth charges until the submarine either surfaced or failed under pressure. Without torpedoes, Harder could not respond and had to rely on endurance until the attacker exhausted its supply. The first set of depth charges was released at 17:23. 6 detonations occurred in close proximity around Harder. The submarine rolled to starboard and internal fixtures were damaged as crew members held on to supports. A second set followed 2 minutes later and the explosions were closer. The force lifted the stern before it settled again. Insulation fell from above and a hydraulic line failed in the control room. For the next 90 minutes the destroyer continued its attack. A total of 42 depth charges were deployed. Most detonated at ineffective depths or distances, but 3 explosions were close enough to damage instruments and create minor leaks. Day kept Harder at 500 feet, moving at 2 knots and reducing noise as much as possible. At 1900 hours the destroyer finally withdrew after using its depth charges. Day waited another hour before surfacing. The ocean was clear with no destroyers or patrol aircraft, and only darkness remained along with the sound of diesel engines recharging batteries. Harder then moved south toward Fremantle at 8 knots to conserve fuel. She reached port on June 26 after a 17-day patrol. When Harder secured at the pier, Admiral Charles Lockwood was already present. He had followed Day's patrol reports through intercepted radio transmissions. 5 destroyers had engaged Harder with 4 confirmed sunk and 1 damaged. In 12 days it became the most effective anti-destroyer patrol in submarine warfare history. Lockwood awarded Day the Navy Cross immediately and then asked if he could repeat the performance. Day responded without hesitation, stating that with torpedoes he would sink 10. Harder's crew remained in Fremantle during July for repairs and resupply. Day also trained new crew members in direct attack tactics. By late July, submarine commanders across the Pacific had reviewed Harder's patrol reports and adopted similar methods. The approach proved effective. Between June and August 1944, American submarines sank 14 Japanese destroyers using variations of this strategy. On August 5, Harder departed Fremantle for her 6th war patrol. She was assigned to a 3-submarine group with USS Haddo and USS Hake under Day's command. Their mission was to patrol waters west of Luzon and target Japanese shipping moving toward the Philippines. The patrol began successfully. On August 21, the group intercepted a 16-ship convoy near Palawan Bay. During a coordinated attack, they sank 4 cargo ships totaling 22,000 tons. On August 22, Harder and Haddo engaged 3 coastal defense vessels near Bataan and all were sunk. Harder was credited with destroying 2 frigates named Matsuwa and Hiburi. By August 23, Haddo had used all of its torpedoes and withdrew from the operation. This left Harder and Hake continuing patrol near Daesal Bay along the western coast of Luzon. Japanese intelligence had tracked the movements of the group and had a general idea of their location. They prepared a response to counter them. At 0453 on August 24, USS Hake was submerged about 4 miles off Homenhan Island. Through the periscope, the crew could see Harder on the surface about 4,500 yards to the south. Both submarines were preparing to attack a damaged Japanese destroyer that Haddo had hit the previous day. At that moment, Hake's sonar operator detected a signal that indicated danger. Echo ranging was detected at close distance and approaching rapidly. All electrical power failed and emergency lighting stopped working. At 600 feet, which was beyond the safe operating depth, Harder's hull began to collapse under pressure. Internal bulkheads gave way and compartments were crushed rapidly. The submarine was lost within 3 minutes after the first depth charge impact. At 0600 CD-22 and PB-102 reported a confirmed destruction. Oilwood debris and cork surfaced in large amounts. The Japanese ships remained in the area for 2 hours and released additional depth charges to ensure the submarine was fully destroyed. No survivors were found. All 79 crew members aboard Harder were lost, including Commander Samuel Day and radioman Calvin Bull, who had received a Bronze Star for earlier actions against destroyers, along with every officer and sailor who contributed to the submarine's operations. USS Hake stayed submerged until nightfall, and its captain later submitted a report describing the loss of Harder. The message reached Admiral Charles Lockwood at 0800 on August 25. He immediately halted submarine operations in the Daesal Bay area and instructed all vessels to withdraw to safer positions. The information reached the United States in early September, and the Navy Department announced that USS Harder was presumed lost with all crew members. No further details were released because submarine operations remained classified. The full account of Harder's 5th patrol was not made public until after the war. The Japanese command was aware of the outcome. Admiral Toyota received the report on August 26, confirming that the submarine, which had threatened his destroyer forces for several months, was no longer active. He issued a commendation to the crew of CD-22. However, he did not fully recognize the extent of the impact already caused by Day's actions or how the events over 4 days in June had influenced later developments. The Battle of the Philippine Sea began on June 19, 1944, 9 days after Harder destroyed its 4th destroyer near Toi. Admiral Ozawa's mobile fleet engaged Admiral Raymond Spruance's 5th Fleet in what became the largest carrier battle in history. 15 American carriers faced 9 Japanese carriers, with 900 American aircraft against 430 Japanese aircraft. The battle continued for 2 days. American pilots shot down 376 Japanese aircraft while losing only 30. This outcome became known among pilots as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. 3 Japanese carriers were sunk, including Taiho Shokaku and Hayo. 2 battleships were damaged and 1 cruiser was lost. The Imperial Japanese Navy lost about 75% of its carrier air groups and was unable to recover from that loss. The outcome might have been different if Admiral Ozawa had arrived as originally planned. His strategy required the mobile fleet to leave Toi on June 15, which would have allowed 4 days for reconnaissance aircraft to locate the American fleet before the battle. His carriers would have been fully supplied and his destroyer screens properly arranged with coordination from land-based aircraft in the Philippines. Instead, Harder forced an earlier departure by 6 days. Ozawa reached the Philippine Sea on June 14 with his fleet spread across a wide area. His reconnaissance aircraft had already consumed fuel during the early movement and could not conduct effective searches. His destroyers were still reorganizing after anti-submarine patrols near Toi and supply ships were delayed by several days. When American carrier aircraft located his fleet on June 19, his carriers were still launching aircraft. His combat air patrol lacked sufficient strength and fleet formation remained disorganized. The battle outcome reflected this lack of readiness. Ozawa's condition resulted directly from the earlier departure, and that decision was influenced by Day sinking 4 destroyers in 4 days, which made Toi unsafe. Admiral Charles Lockwood recognized this impact. In his post-war account, he described Harder's 5th Patrol as one of the most important submarine operations of the Pacific War. The loss of 4 destroyers reduced escort protection for Japanese carriers, while the forced early departure disrupted the entire operational plan before the engagement began. Between December 1941 and August 1944, American submarines sank 14 enemy ships totaling 5.3 million tons, including merchant vessels, cargo ships, tankers and troop transports, but only 29 were warships. Many submarine commanders avoided attacking warships because they were considered too dangerous and fast. Day demonstrated that submarines could successfully target warships. His direct attack method worked because it challenged established expectations of destroyer captains who assumed submarines would retreat. When Harder advanced instead of withdrawing, it caused hesitation, and that brief delay allowed torpedoes to reach their target. By the end of the war, American submarines using this method sank 214 Japanese warships, including 4 aircraft carriers, 1 battleship, 9 cruisers and 38 destroyers, along with submarines, escorts and patrol craft. Japan began the war with 63 destroyers and built 49 more during the conflict, while American submarines sank 38 of them. Harder alone accounted for 4 destroyers in 4 days. On March 27, 1946, President Harry Truman presented Commander Samuel Day's Medal of Honor to his widow Edwina Day during a ceremony at the White House. The citation noted that his record of sinking 5 Japanese destroyers in short-range torpedo attacks demonstrated exceptional leadership and determination. The Navy later named a destroyer escort USS Day, commissioned in 1954, which served until 1972. Harder received the Presidential Unit Citation for its first 5 war patrols, along with 6 battle stars for World War II service. Its motto, "Hit Him Harder," became widely recognized across the submarine force. Her true legacy was the tactical change she introduced. Before Harder's 5th Patrol, submarine doctrine focused on stealth and avoidance. If a destroyer detected a submarine, the standard response was to go deep, switch to silent running and wait for depth charges to pass. Direct engagement with destroyers was viewed as too dangerous. The numbers supported that belief, since destroyers were faster, better armed and built to destroy submarines. Day changed that thinking by recognizing one key point about destroyer commanders. They expected submarines to withdraw. When a submarine advanced, instead the commander had to decide quickly with limited information whether to turn or maintain course or open fire while torpedoes closed in at high speed. Many chose incorrectly, and by the time they reacted, the torpedoes had already reached their target. Between June and December 1944, 12 American submarines adopted Day's aggressive approach. USS Tang sank 2 destroyers. USS Trigger destroyed 1. USS Barb sank 1 and damaged another. USS Flasher destroyed 3 escort vessels using direct attack methods. The success rate reached about 63%, which meant that out of 5 attack submarines destroyed 3 destroyers and damaged another while only 1 attack failed. Japanese destroyer commanders later adjusted their tactics. By late 1944 they began turning away and then circling back to force submarines into vulnerable positions or slowing down to let torpedoes pass before attempting a ram. The method still worked, but success dropped to about 40%. American submarine losses increased. Between August and December 1944, 9 submarines were lost to destroyer attacks. Tang was lost on October 24 when one of its own torpedoes malfunctioned. Harder was destroyed on August 24. Darter ran aground on October 23 while pursuing a destroyer. Even with these losses, submarines were sinking more enemy ships than before. Admiral Charles Lockwood faced a difficult decision whether to return to defensive operations or accept higher losses to weaken Japan's shipping system. He chose aggressive operations. Between January and August 1945, American submarines using this approach sank 437 Japanese merchant ships and 53 warships. By August, Japan had less than 1/4 of its original merchant shipping capacity. The home islands faced severe shortages and industrial production declined due to lack of resources. The Japanese Navy also struggled to supply fuel for its remaining ships. Day did not witness these results since he died 3 months after his major success. He was lost to the same type of escort vessel he had studied and engaged for months. His methods continued to influence operations as submarine commanders studied Harder's patrol reports and applied similar tactics in their own missions. On May 22, 2024, an exploration team led by Tim Taylor and the Lost 52 project located Harder's wreck in the South China Sea. The submarine rests upright on the seafloor at a depth of 3,750 feet, about 12 miles west of Daesal Bay, where it made its final dive. The hull remains mostly intact with visible damage near the conning tower caused by depth charges. The site is protected as a war grave and no recovery operations are allowed. The discovery provided closure for families who had waited decades for confirmation and recognition of the crew's service. It also acknowledged the contribution of 79 men whose actions influenced naval warfare. Today, Harder's history continues to be studied. At the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, submarine instructors still reference the direct attack method as an example of decisive action in warfare. Modern submarines do not use the same approach since current torpedoes are guided and do not require close-range engagement. However, the principle remains relevant. When an opponent expects withdrawal, an unexpected advance can be more effective. The Naval History and Heritage Command preserves Harder's patrol reports, including communication records, firing solutions, and battle data. These records allow researchers to follow how Day refined his approach over multiple patrols and improved his effectiveness over time. Commander Day is buried at Arlington National Cemetery in Section 59, Grave 874. His headstone lists his rank, his service dates, and his Medal of Honor recognition. Families of Harder's crew visit each year on August 24 to remember those who were lost. They place flowers and share stories about relatives who served at young ages. The 79 crew members came from 38 states, including individuals from rural and industrial backgrounds as well as university graduates. They volunteered for submarine duty despite the high risk. About 22% of submariners in World War II did not survive, which was the highest rate among American forces. Calvin Bull, the radioman who earned a Bronze Star for his role in earlier actions, was 24 when he died. John Mao, who survived Harder's sinking and later became an admiral, spent decades sharing their history and died in 2010 at age 90. The last surviving crew member, Paul Bryce, died in 2022 at age 98. With his passing, no direct witnesses remain. Their experiences are preserved through official records and historical accounts. These documents provide details of operations but cannot fully convey the conditions faced during combat or the decisions required under pressure. The historical record shows that Harder sank 4 destroyers in 4 days. It does not fully capture the physical strain or the uncertainty of each patrol. If this account was meaningful, consider supporting the channel. Each interaction helps share these historical accounts with a wider audience. Subscribing and enabling notifications allows more people to learn about these events. You can also leave a comment and share your location or mention if someone in your family served. This helps build a community focused on preserving history. Thank you for watching and for helping ensure that Commander Samuel Day and the crew of USS Harder are remembered.